Take us there, good jizzle.
Hello and welcome to Quackcast 291. This is Ozone Ocean. With me is Bubbly Baines. Hello, Bubbly Baines. That's all we
hello.
got. And we have the titillating Tanserine. Hello, Tanserine.
Hello.
It's the alliteration that made me laugh. I don't know.
The oily Ozone Ocean is
cheerful.
here today.
I don't.
We're going to talk about philosophy and politics in comics, and mainly web comics, because that's what we all do. This is Tance's idea, because Tance is very politically minded person. And
For anyone who hasn't noticed.
for those few, this is Tance's bread and butter. And before we get into that, though, we have a featured comic, and I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be because we're doing this advance. So we have Gene Joke going to do the featured comic for us this week. Take it away, Mr. Gene Joke. Gene Joke is actually away on holiday this week in Spain, and he forgot to send in his recording for this featured comic, so I'm going to read out instead, Mr. Ozone Ocean. This week's featured comic was The Epic of Blitzov. The Epic of Blitzov is shock horror, the tale of Blitzov, a warrior and explorer who resides in a settlement called Bunkeria. Bunkeria is a seemingly dangerous place filled with distinct characters such as the Doctor, a nihilistic surgeon with a fascination for dissection. Light on explanation, the story unfolds through the art as much as it does the dialogue, which is pretty sparse. The comic promises to be an adventure of discovery for both the reader and Blitzov himself. If you've read Pitface's other comics, particularly Putrid Meat, you might notice something interesting about this. The Bunkerians are characters in Putrid Meat, of which one of the characters specifically, Tread, is the last survivor. In the Epic of Blitzov, we have the founding of Bunkeria. So the Epic of Blitzov is sort of like a prequel. Well, it is a prequel spin-off to Putrid Meat. So you're getting a bit of an early Paleolithic version of the world of Putrid Meat within the Epic of Blitzov. A foundation myth, if you will. Blitzov is an interesting character. He's a very big, tall man dressed in black leather sort of stuff with spikes. He sort of resembles Danzig in a way with his big stern features and his round, broad cheeks. But he has a bit of a clay-like complexion. And then again, that does resemble Danzig a bit. But, yes, Blitzov, he's seemingly immune to too much injury. He's a very powerful man, but not that intelligent. He seems to be the ideal founding hero of the great civilization of Bunkeria. Anyway, I hope you enjoy The Epic of Blitzov by Pitface. Read it down. And that was Gene Joke with his featured comic. Thank you for that, Mr. Gene Joke. And next up, we have the music by Mr. Gum Wallace. And this week, Gum Wallace has given us the theme to Krasnovit, which is a comic by Mad Mind Inc. And I featured this comic a couple of weeks ago. It's about a Ukrainian fairy story about a prince who has a curse on him and has to get over that. Anyway, enjoy the music. It's subtle, it's careful, it's a fairy tale theme. It's inducing you into a dark forest of strangeness that is Krasnovit. that was Krasnovit by Gun Wallace, and the comic is by Mad Mind Inc. Enjoy. A very beautifully drawn piece of work. All right, now...
Lovely.
I don't know about the politics in Krasnovit, though. I'm not sure, because there's a prince, so it's obviously a monarchy. There's a bit of a monarchy system happening
And
there.
it's a fairy tale, it's probably absolute monarchy. No constitution.
Exactly, as peasants who are working, they're serfs, they're subject to their lord, and that's what they have to do, work the land and be farmers, and there's no chance for them to rise up or better themselves. They have to stay farmers. That is the life of peasants in an absolute monarchy. But there are other political systems, and different comics and characters handle it in different ways. So, Tance, do you want to take the floor and regale us?
I guess I have
You
to
have
now
the
that. So, well, the idea. I mean, what I was noticing, especially as the Drunkduck awards were going on, and always the category of the philosophy / political comic gets a little bit neglected or slighted. I mean, there are never many candidates, or there are only comics that are satirical of current events, mostly, with some exceptions, of course. Or there are others that are directly philosophical, like A Reasonable Case, which was nominated last year, if I'm not mistaken. But there's so much more to political comics and existential comics and philosophical comics. I mean, there are so many nuances that one can pour into a comic without having the actual plot be the politics or the actual plot be the philosophy. But the plot could be moved forward by the philosophies and the politics of different characters. And I think that is something that people don't really talk about often. And now we are starting to talk about it, and I'm extremely happy about that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Because as we're talking...
Look how joyful Tan's read is right now. We're talking about politics. Yeah.
Yay!
She's like,
you see, in Greece, there is no way for you to exist without being a fully political creature. Even the apolitical Greeks are very political because they will advocate their non-politics to you. So it's basically politics again. So the culture is built around your stance as a creature in the cosmos, and that is both philosophy and politics. There is no way not to, and that's why I'm so happy. It's like I'm breathing oxygen.
Politics is a word with Greek roots too.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is politiki. It's politics.
Exactly. And what we were saying...
And we actually have two distinct words. I mean, we do have them in English as well, but it's politiki and politia, which is polity in English. But I think it's more used in Greek than it is in English, because one is politics is what you advocate, and polity is how you live your life, how you conduct yourself throughout life based on your politics. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they are in harmony between each other. And that's where the interesting elements lie, in my opinion. Sorry, I'm getting too excited. See, this is how Greek...
No, it's great. Yeah.
And that brings up another thing we were talking about just before we got on the Quackcast, is that it's, as you were saying before, it's not all about the directly politics that's happening in the comic or like an undertone. It's the politics of particular characters that inform their personalities and their actions, and yeah, their polity and all that kind of thing.
If I'm allowed, I mean, I will get it off my chest and completely out there so that I can shut up later and we can talk about other comics and other elements. But to give an example, in Without Moonlight, all characters are heavily politicized, all of them, even if they don't know it. And the polity and the politics of each character don't necessarily agree. For example, Basil is a right-wing person, extremely right-wing, annoyingly so.
Conservative kind of character.
Yes, he's extremely conservative and he votes right-wing.
Yeah.
Okay, or at least he starts in the story by voting that. But his polity is definitely not conservative. He is more swinging towards the left, let's say. So more, I wouldn't say liberal, but more towards socialism,
Okay.
if I am allowed to say the S word.
I don't think there are any Americans here, so we're not sensitive to that word.
Awesome. Whereas you have Orestes, and Orestes he's a communist, okay, and he's supposedly left-wing, but his polity is extremely conservative and right-wing. So you have these two characters being foils for each other for exactly that reason. So there you have it.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. There's
I like
two
it.
layers to their politics. They're not just, straight. Everything they think and they do is just follows one simple philosophy, but it's more nuanced than
Yeah,
that.
they're not just a caricature of each
No.
side or something like that. Yeah, that is good.
It's more about the way
Yeah,
normal
and then
people
you
do
have
things.
the third one. Yeah, and the third one is
Well,
Arthur,
Yeah.
who is supposed to be a Nazi, and that is his ideology at this point and his politics, and his polity is not that. So they will have to move from where they are, and that's what is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Very. Yeah.
Yeah, I get
I
it.
shut up.
You mean, did you say they will have to, look at her, how happy she is. I can't believe it. It's so awesome. Like, the joy. It's amazing. So did you, I missed a little bit of that though. Like, are they moving out of their sort of quote unquote extreme views, like sort of towards a compromise? Is that what you're getting at? Like,
Yeah, they start by compromising, but I'm not sure that they are going to end up like in the middle. Some will, but I think that towards the end, we might end up with them being in exactly opposite directions than what they started off as. Like, Orestes is a person that will become more and more totalitarian, quote unquote, and will start to actually realize that, and then he will have to decide whether he wants to officially be that and not just act like it. And then we have Basil, who will be more and more leftist, and then he will have to decide whether he wants to be officially that or not. So,
Okay.
same for
very
us
cool.
again.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And what about the children?
Fantastic. So they evolved.
Fotis and, the rest of the characters, do they sort of take on a more
Well,
political dimension?
their politics are forming because they are kids and they are basically just reacting to their environment. But they are definitely already going in different trajectories on how they act, but not necessarily on different approaches in politics. Like, for example, the first thing that they are, both of them, I mean, I'm thinking of Fotis and Diomedes right now more.
Yeah.
They are anti-Nazi. Okay, they are anti-fascist, anti-Nazi, anti all these things. But what they are pro is still out there. It's still forming. They don't really know what they are.
It's just survival at the moment for those characters.
Yeah.
And following role models, I imagine that's what kids do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And
it's sort of where you're at in life. I mean, yeah, that's not about this comic particularly, but like where you're at in life definitely can alter. Like at a certain point, you might be more idealistic. You might have less experience, and then your particular experiences can sort of change what you believe. And I mean, there are, like in real life, people do switch as they age or as their experiences change, as their life changes and stuff like that. They can switch kind of dramatically, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the whole thing about, polity and what influences people to change is interesting because you think about, say, my characters, for example, say Pinky, her particular political viewpoint and her views of the world, what are they informed by? What made her think the way she did? That can inform different storylines. Or say if I'm showing a story from earlier in life, I've got to show what particular things happened in there to make her approach situations the way she does later in the comic. What changed the way she sort of thinks, her philosophy and her political viewpoint. Was it just her growing up, or was it any particular situations that actually molded that political viewpoint? So that's a very interesting way of looking at it. You can look at it from an end point and also from a forming point, and as well as how it influences how the character reacts to situations. So as a future kind of thing too.
Yeah, exactly.
So for Pinky, she's more socialist in the way she thinks, she thinks for the good of everyone and those kind of things, rather than a more a right-wing kind of view, which is for the good of self and everything forming from self rather than the good of the group.
And they would maybe say less government control, like they're less regulated, like more freedom is how they, to put that in a positive, just for the,
I know, but that's a classical, that's a classical modern American capitalist
we don't
kind
want to
of
slant.
view of it. But I'm thinking from Cece's point of view, it's more of a Nazi kind of view of that right wing ideal. So it's self is important, but self as a country as well as a self, but not self as an individual of the country. So individuals are just part of the machinery of the country. They're not really important as people. That's the whole right-wing point of view. They're just there to be the cogs in the machine and to help things go. And, if they die, it doesn't matter because it's all for the greater glory of the country. Whereas with Pinky, it's people are important and it's people who make the country. It's not the country that makes the people, So,
this is a very, very defining element of the character, especially in a comic that is about not only war but about conflict. And what comic isn't about conflict in the bottom line, let's say. So,
and Pinky is all about the bottom line. But that's off.
And what a strong bottom is.
Yes.
But it's important to have a good idea of those kind of things of your characters, especially when you're going into conflicts or character conflicts or character viewpoints on situations. Their political point of view is going to inform how they talk about this thing or how they relate to it. So, say Baines, Typical Strange is a sitcom comic, but characters react to situations in different ways. They talk about things, they have funny takes on things that happen. Do they have different political viewpoints that inform that?
I've never thought about it. What I thought about with differentiating them was sort of their temperament and their emotional kind of outlook is more what differentiates them from each other. Like sort of some of them are more kind of logical and authoritarian, not politically speaking, but just personality-wise, temperament-wise. Some of them are softer, more creative types. Some are more confident. So that's how I figured it out. I never did really think of their politics. They're not particularly political characters, politically interested. But I could say what I think they would be.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing. Because,
Abigail, a little more.
Go on.
No.
Hello?
Hello?
I can hear you. I was just going to say that's a good thing because you know enough about the characters to be able to, think in terms of their political points of view and, have an informed decision as to what they would be. So go on. Abigail's logical.
Yeah, she's like logical, meaning she's like a left-brainized. She's somewhat regimented and all this kind of stuff. And that wouldn't necessarily translate to, certain political thing. But I think she would be somewhat of a left-leaning. She's, tough but fair, I guess, kind of personality. She's into justice, I would say. I would put her to like a somewhat of a left-leaning, a moderate, like sort of left-leaning political thing. TK might be the other way. He might be a little more right-leaning. Freedom being his kind of personal freedom being his thing. He wants to be able to do whatever he wants. Oscar is sort of a
libertarian straight away.
Maybe, yeah, you did, yeah, and I thought that was really good. Oscar probably kind of a bleeding heart kind of dude. So he would put it left leaning. Harley and Wade, I would say, I'm not even sure, probably fairly apolitical. I mean, if they had power, they might even be sort of fascist type people. I don't know. It might be interesting to take a look at that, see what they would do with authority. Yeah, Wade might be a kind of a might is right kind of guy. Which would you call that? Like an extreme right leaning, or an extreme? Or I don't know what you'd call that.
Extremist, I guess.
It's extremist, yeah, perhaps, yeah. He'd be. Yeah, I mean, if in the early days he would have like fit right into being a thug or something. The strong rule. Penelope sort of, she's a loving type. She would be something like whatever like makes everyone happy would be what she wants.
A popularist.
Yeah. Maybe. A populist. None of them.
Go on.
I mean, I was not super when I wrote the characters initially, so I don't know if any of them would really share my particular point of view. Right, I'm quite interested in politics now, and outraged and stuff like that. I don't know if I put any of them in my category per se, but maybe if they saw what I saw lately and just in the news, I mean, and everything. Some of them might come to my way of thinking. Some of them might disagree. Some of them might be Trump. Some of them might be Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. Some might be Clinton. I would be none of those, but yeah. I don't know. Anyway,
and that actually brings an interesting point. I mean, which of your character shares your political views, for example? Like me, I mean, none of my characters share my view right at this point, because I'm a direct Democrat, so I'm like super threatening, super left, I guess. I don't know. Depends on who you ask. But I mean, none of them are considering that. So, and which characters are harder to write? Considering, I mean, if you consider their politics? And if you consider their politics, do you change your attitude as an author towards them? Like, these are interesting questions that I have always, played with in my mind because I'm weird. So,
No, that's good stuff, though. Yeah.
But for me, I'm
helps
fascinated by it. So,
Yeah.
That is interesting. I mean, obviously in my comic, Pinky is closest to my point of view. Cece is closest to something completely different. Ice is Ice Kincaid is like a caricature of an American heroic stereotype.
so capitalist.
He probably would be a classic old money capitalist from America in the 1920s, 1930s who's
So Republican, super Republican.
Back then, I think there were Democrats who were the ones who were like that. Not sure. I think they were the ones who were very right wing. Southern Democrats were very well known for being very right.
Yeah, they switched, right? Oh, you guys are very educated.
It was different worlds, yeah. But yeah, whichever is the right wing kind of thing, that's what he would have been. Just because his father would have been right wing and he would want to emulate whatever he saw as being powerful. That would be his thing. He'd be a very status obsessed kind of person who wants to be like what he thinks is powerful, which a lot of people are. A lot of people gravitate towards symbols of power because they think they can get that for themselves. I mean, Trump supporters, for example. If I have a rich leader, maybe I can be rich. That kind of thing.
Yeah, good luck with that one. Yeah.
Are the characters? I don't know, because Pinky TA is set in a very military kind of situation. Obviously, there are things outside the military world, but Pinky TA, the comic, is very much just within this small little military society here. So there is obviously politics within a military society, which is all purely hierarchical. It's almost a monarchy system. That's how those things are. It's regimented, yeah. So whoever is in charge, stays in charge. There's no revolutions or anything like that, because that breaks the system. So you have to do what your superior officer says, and maybe if you're good enough, you'll get promoted and you'll be a senior kind of officer eventually. But yeah, it's a very hierarchical, weird system. So there's a built-in politics to the way everyone behaves to each other, which is a weird thing. Weird.
That's very You're making me realize that there have only been small hints of this, and it's only shown up here and there in my comics so far. But there are future plans of many stories. Just listening to you and like thinking about this, that it's a lot of the villains or the sort of antagonistic forces are very much establishment. It's a criminal, like mafia type organization, or it's the sort of established way of being. It's the fall in line type of mentality that my character buck up against a lot. And I don't know, this could be just informed by the way I think now or something, but I definitely can see that like as a like the establishment, whatever that establishment happens to be threat my characters and their
Okay. So and
rebellious way of being or whatever.
That when I think about typical Strange as well, I sort of have this idea of a bit of an 80s vibe, those 80s kind of adventure kind of films, that a lot of them were based around the idea of some kind of radical freedom against the government or against this shadowy outside force. So that does sort of fit into that, the Goonies or something like that. They go on an adventure, or E.T. or you know, whatever.
Yeah, I'd say that's interesting. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I know that I'm thinking like there are little nuances again that except characters that are definitely do have some kind of polity, at least if not politics. But there are also ways that the author can telegraph to the reader some of his or her own stances on certain things. Like I'm thinking of 1010, and there is one of the issues, and it's so succulent, like what he does. In 1010 and the Picaros is the book, and he in the adventure is something completely different. They are trying to save Bianca Castafiore, who is the soprano that had there. Yeah, they are trying to rescue her from this dictatorial Gaddafi-esque regime in this make-believe country. But the thing is that it starts with a revolution that is taking a coup that is taking place, and the first frame that you see is of people in a shanty town, on basically living on a garbage dump, basically, and it has this sign that says "Viva Tapioca," who was the previous guy.
I think we can all agree with. Yeah.
And he's the one that gets overturned by this other guy that is called General Alcazar.
Yeah, I remember this.
And when the story finishes,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, it was just.
Okay.
But when the story finishes and we see the heroes, flying off away from the country, and we pass from the same frame, which is exactly the same, only the sign now says "Viva Alcazar," which is, and this is the author's little message that he has put inside this story. It has nothing to do with the characters. The characters don't see it. It's just a little message tucked away in for the reader to see. And I love this sort of thing in comics. And I haven't managed to do it in mine. But whoever can, props to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
Difficult.
So it's the message of the Who song, "We won't get fooled again."
Yes, exactly.
I love it. That's perfect. Yeah, that was sort of based on the South American Revolution, say in Cuba and all those kind of countries. How get rid of one dictator and replace it with another dictator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it was basically on the sequences of coups in Argentina at the time.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I think so, but that is my interpretation. I mean, it could be wrong. Okay, don't take it at face value. But it reminded me a lot of the coups in Argentina until Perón came into power.
Yeah. I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I was introduced to that concept was in that old Woody Allen movie called Sleeper, where he is frozen Austin Powers style. Well, I mean, Austin Powers wasn't inspired by that.
Yeah.
He wakes up in the future and ends up joining this revolution. And, the revolutionary leader is killed, but they do topple the regime. Diane Keaton managed to topple the regime. And, she's all excited that the new leader is so, impressive or whatever. Or no, their revolutionary doesn't die. I think he is going to take over. And Woody Allen, at the end of the movie, he explains that they're all terrible. Don't you see? He's just going to be just as bad as the guy. Take it over. Like they're all horrible. So I was like, wow, that made a huge impression on me. Actually, it's like, there's some truth to that.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
No, I love these little or big little pearls tucked away in comics that show that there are several layers to it and that the author is trying to communicate to you more than just, a plot.
Yeah.
And done with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the philosophy of the characters.
The Civil War. Go ahead, bro. No.
Baines, your idea is more rounded out. I want to hear it.
I might have been changing this. Changing the subject. Yeah, Civil War. Yeah, it's a comic podcast. Right. Yeah, the Captain America Civil War movie. It's very good. Very, very well written and great to me in terms of screenplay structure, which they play with a little bit, but it's there. It's a strong structure. It's not your typical. And the characters have very strong positions, especially the unexpected twist that the narcissistic sort of industrialist Iron Man takes the government side in terms of regulating the powerful Avengers, because of the collateral damage and the billions that they cause. Captain America, the military man, takes the other side. He has a personal stake and a friend who's been accused, maybe falsely accused, maybe not, of some horrible thing. That, I thought, was very well done, sort of, in terms of balancing both sides and having two well-intentioned people with opposing views, trying to figure things out and butting heads, and okay. Plus Spider-Man's in it.
Well, it's like Tom said, their polity doesn't match their politics. Is a different thing that's going in opposite directions. So
it is, and it makes sense character-wise and all. But
yeah. Now that you mentioned the Civil War, if we go to the comic, the cover for Captain America's death, just posting it. I mean, for me, at least to my Greek censors, in a sense, I mean, it's super political in the way I interpret it and the way I see it and the way it is brought about, like the handcuffed glove of Captain America with the bloodstains on the newspaper, and then it reads Death of the Dream underside and Fear on the other above the hand. And I think all of this is it's a super political cover, in my opinion. Like, it's open to interpretation, but it definitely projects and transmits messages, I think.
Yeah.
Depending on how
a lot of themes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a red glove too. So
that too, and it is handcuffed.
Yes. I mean, Captain America does have a red glove, but they decided to show that part of his costume rather than his flaggy kind of more flag parts of it. Yeah. Or the mask.
Flaggy part.
Oh, yeah, it reminds me of in the Dexter's Laboratory, they had the Captain America analog character and they called him Flagman. Flagman. I love that. So that is a very, very, very political kind of thing, and it's especially because America now is so very split in right and left, more than it has ever really been, in very strict kind of lines. Even though that's a very artificial thing, because people don't think in purely right or left terms, but it is. And that comic really reflects that.
I don't know if it's the first time, because during, if we go back to the Selma days, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, people were being very, very polarized on certain issues, including there was the Vietnam War going on, there was race and liberty issues all on the table being discussed. And it wasn't just an issue of black civil rights, because you had all sorts of smaller social groups within society being oppressed in some way. So while black civil rights and black suffrage, in a sense, was the figurehead and the spearhead of all of this struggle, I mean, you did still have a very specific and really clear clash between two sides. So I think it's just round two now.
I mean, even back then, it wasn't that clear cut in that we talked before about the Southern Democrats, because you had people on the Democratic Party who were very right-wing, and they were traditionalists, they were conservatives wanting to preserve their old values, so they were against black rights and all this. And of course, the main people behind the Vietnam War were LBJ and Kennedy, who were Democratic.
And that's when you get these really strong polarizations, and if you have the tolerance, I will share a story from the 40s from Greece. You don't get people polarized according to their political party subscriptions, let's say, at the time. Like, for example, when the resistance became a thing in Greece during the occupation, you had people clustering under the flag of the AM, which was definitely left and mostly communist, not completely and officially, but mostly. And you had the royalists, you had right-wing people, you had people that were apolitical, and of course you had the communists and left-wingers and stuff. They were all together, polarized on that side, and then the priests and everything. And then you had on the other side just as many people siding with the new order, that you have to be practical and you have to be grounded and learn to live with the new situation, which was the Nazis that had come to stay forever and stuff like that. So we're gonna see that very, very quickly in the comic. But that was the thing. I mean, people polarized radically across political parties based on that single issue, and whether you accept or not that this is the new status quo and you have to compromise or not. So,
okay. I was thinking of in terms of say current American politics is the idea that no matter what you think, you have to side with one political party or the other, and you have to compromise all your political values about, homosexuality or immigration or whatever in order to identify with Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. So you have to subsume all your other beliefs in order to be part of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, especially, I don't know if I should go into this, but I think especially what this is your chance. This is the time when we're talking politics. This is your chance. Please do it. Please. Go into I hesitate to alienate, but anyway, to alienate people or whatever. But like what has kind of become clear, at least clear to me and clear to a lot of people, I think, in this whole election is sort of the corporate power and the level at which money really controls every decision politicians make on the right and the left. And so you have this kind of corporate structure that owns them, and it kind of doesn't matter. I mean, Donald Trump sort of has this rhetoric about sort of like, you're angry and I'm going to change things and stuff like that. But I mean, if you look at him and how he operates, he operates in a very similar way. I don't think he would change much. I don't think he would change anything for the better. But it's a corporate controlled structure on both sides. And I think that's what, that's kind of like, that is horrible. and we're in trouble either way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even the social issue thing that you're like compromising on ideas, because like a lot of what they say is just baloney, and that stuff. I think it's sort of what their true priorities lie with these massive like titans of industry and the millionaires and billionaires to coin a phrase, to phrase a coin. That I don't remember what my point was, but I mean that's kind of a scary thing, and the idea of like what you're compromising is not just your point of view on social issues. You're compromising everything, and you're not compromising it. It's being compromised for you, It's being taken away from us, I feel a similar, not quite as bad, thankfully, but a similar thing where I am, up in the Arctic. Nobody I fully are with, but anyway.
Yeah. I think that the whole democracy, quote unquote, big quote unquote, issue is that they are forcing you basically to choose between pre-selected choices. So then basically that makes it a non-choice, because if someone else pre-selects, then basically whatever selection you make is a safe, in a sense, choice. Like democracy would be a thing if you had these pre-selections, fine, but you also had a little option underneath, being able to vote against both your options. So, and if you had like an overwhelming black vote, as we call it in Greece, then these two candidates wouldn't be able to actually assume office, even if they had a majority vote from the minority ones. And then they would have to have election with new candidates that were not these two people. Then you would have some change going on. Like we used to have this in Greece, but because it was so terribly impossible to get the pre-selections into office, it was banned.
Yeah.
So.
But that did, in your opinion, that worked? Like that was working?
Yes, it was working very well in two senses. First, you could actually vote someone out of the race, and that was a great thing. People would have to be very careful of what they did and how they did it. Okay, I mean politicians. And the other thing was that you had actual political power as a civilian, as a citizen, which is the thing here. I mean, otherwise it's not a democracy, it's something else. Okay, so it was working. The problem is that it wasn't working for those that actually want to control political events and want
and people have the cash to.
Yes, exactly. And those that want to take the self-determination away from you and tell you what to do, they had problems with this. So what happened to us was that we got a dictatorship.
Yeah.
And after that, and I'm not talking about the junta, I'm talking about the dictatorship before the World War. And then, goodbye to all that. Yeah, and we also had another attempt of a more direct democratic nature in the freed lands of Greece, because we had freed 30% of Greek lands before the actual official liberation during World War II. Like in 1944, there was a whole new free state of Greece that we had freed all on our own. Nobody knows about that, but it's a fact. And the political system there was direct democratic, and it was working perfectly. And I'm not just saying that. There are accounts of this, documents and official documents and stuff like that. But then, when the liberation happened, and Churchill had something to do with that. That's too much to say right now. We had the king. So yeah,
Right.
after a lot of stuff that happened, we had the king.
Yeah.
Prussian
Wow.
king. Well, I was just
We
thinking,
didn't start the fire. It was oh.
I was thinking we should bring this back to comics again, where we're sort of coming to the last.
Comics.
See,
And,
this is the beauty of politics. You cannot control it. It grows out of
it grows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It opens. But I was thinking of monarchy, like you just said. So Krasnovit is, well, that was the comic I brought up as an example, because that is the featured music by Gummels. Obviously, there's a monarchy in there. So monarchy is one of the simplest, oldest forms of government. Well, it's not the oldest, but it is one of the older forms of government. And I was trying to think of any comics that have that as a simple structure, because it is a very simple structure, and it's the kind of way that people subconsciously think in terms of politics when they are, developing as a young person, because we don't really have an advanced idea of interpersonal relations and supply and demand and all that. We have a very, very straightforward kind of conception of this. So
easily, any comic that depicts fairy tales will have that. Usually, you have fairy tales.
Oh, fairy
Any
tales.
comic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fairy tales.
Yeah, because that's the classic kind of structure within them. Yeah. I was just trying to think about, because most of us will, I mean, that is the simplest way. And if we do a fantasy comic, there's a monarchy, and a lot of cleverer people, like say the writer Terry Pratchett, he will do very, very clever ideas on a monarchy, and it's not necessarily a monarchy, but it's it's more a Medici kind of situation. He has a very, very advanced kind of view. But yeah, so fantasy ones will default to a monarchy kind of system. But do the people who do that really understand what a monarchy means? So would those characters have?
I would have to ask them, I think.
So when you read a fantasy comic, you don't sort of think, now these characters are sort of thinking in terms of their serfs, or they're stuck in their political role, and they have to have deference to a king or a lord, or are these characters sort of written with a very, usually I think characters are most often written with the author's understanding of the world, so they all think, oh, we're free and we're socially mobile and we can just do anything we like. We're poor, but we can be a knight or a warrior if we want, because that's how it is. So
I don't think that the monarchies in fantasies are exactly like the strict, unless the author really wants to showcase such a regime. I don't think it has the historical monarchy rules, like the caste systems and the specific dress codes, that if you didn't dress as that, you could lose your head, or stuff like that. But I also think that there is some truth to fiction in that if you have a kingdom that is well ruled, as most fairy tales start, like a wise king that had, everyone is in prosperity and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Then people will not actually have a problem with it. I mean, a monarchy can work as a system, as a social system, assuming that everyone abides by certain rules and nobody oppresses anybody else. And so eventually nobody is actually poor. And that is where the problems begin, usually, in social fiction and stuff like that. So if you have something like that, then everyone will be happy in their position, because they this is what they know, and they are happy and they can survive and have a life in that particular place where they are.
Yeah. See,
problems, and I think that's how revolutions begin anyway, is when you can't survive You are suffocating, and you have to find a way out of it. That's when you start thinking of alternatives.
You have instability built into a system, or growing within, like a cancer, because of it's just a runaway kind of system that's working wrong.
If we look at the French Revolution, I mean, they didn't immediately go to cut off the royal family's heads. It took them like 3 or 4 years to do that, and they wouldn't have done it if Marie Antoinette wasn't an idiot, basically. And I'm not talking about the let them eat cake thing. I'm talking about the treacherous letters to Austria, and I'm talking about her incapacity to be flexible and accept the constitutional monarchy and stuff like that. I mean, that's when they cut off her head, because she wouldn't actually parley with these people that were starving, and they had serious issues, and she wasn't interested in it. And I'm talking about her because Louis was basically her puppet at that point. So, yeah, there you have it. I don't think in fantasy you have this sort of power struggle, unless the author really wants to showcase that. You have a very balanced and well-working monarchy.
Most of the time, I was thinking Cosmos Song, which is the newer comic by Pepe.
Pepe!
Pepe! So, in that...
I should check it out.
What's that?
I should check it out if it's by Pepe.
Cosmos Song?
So, what she's got here is a group of people that live on an island, and a sort of tropical sort of island, and they have their own society and their own little caste system. They have warriors, and they have kind of technician kind of people who build things, and the warriors who fight and they hunt, and so they have specific roles, and the women have specific roles. So it's all sort of based around like a more tribalistic society. So it's not so much a monarchy there as it's more a theocracy kind of system, because they have like a tribal priest or priestess who decides, what kind of caste people fit into and how people follow the laws and things. So that is an older system than monarchy. So that's a much older system, which is an interesting thing, tribal theocracy. But in opposition to that, they have these people who live on the other side of the world who have a monarchy as their political system. And one of these young people, in order to move up his status within this monarchy system, he has to, perform some kind of a tribal rite. He has to, well, not tribal, but he has to perform some kind of rite of passage in killing this monster in order to, be considered a man and to take his role as an adult. And, he fails and he gets trapped in with these people on the island here. But, yeah, so that is built into it. That the politics is built into the whole structure of the comic and the world, which I thought was rather interesting. So you should read it, Tance, and you'll have a different point of view on it.
It's worth a look. Yeah, it's very cool. It's not in your face. It's very much about the characters, right?
Yeah.
But it's all there.
Which brings me to one last question. Like, how easy is it for you as an author to write a character that has different political views from you, if assuming, of course, that they play a major role in the story? Like, how easy is it to write, if you are a right-wing person, to write a left-wing person, or if you are a left-wing person to write, and I'm talking with modern terms here, okay, to write the opposite, the opposition, and not in a caricature way, like natural, like a real person, because anyone can write like a super caricature of
basically
what you don't like.
You do the opposite side to what you believe in as Hitler all the time. That's how
exactly.
Yeah, it might be tougher to do a caricature of your own point of view. That might be a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, very.
King of the Hill, I thought, did that so well. Like presenting two sides of various issues. I don't know if you guys ever saw that cartoon.
Loved it. Boy, howdy.
Where the sort of traditional. Oh, dango! I'll tell you what, man. Dango. Yeah. But
boom har. I love that.
But always so well written. Yeah, like in great sort of themes and subjects, and especially Hank, the father, and Bobby, the son, on different sides of so many different issues.
I love
always so good.
Bobby.
And I haven't actually seen even an episode, but I hear that South Park does a lot of that. Like it's like an adult comment through cartoons, but I haven't seen it, so I don't really know. So
it's anarchical more than anything else.
What?
Anarchical?
Oh, okay, anarchical. All right.
Yeah. It seems like it's a left-wing take, but it's more anarchistic than anything else. I would think. Cartman would be the typical authoritarian, kind of very right-wing point of view in that, but the other characters sort of might approach things in a more left-wing way, but come off as being very just anarchist, basically, and they end up smashing everything down and saying everyone's wrong. Yeah, that's how that world sort of is. The parents represent some kind of establishment, authority, continuation, and the kids represent challenge to that order. Oh my God, you can look at everything from a political point of view. I love it.
See, now you have Dan's glasses. Dan's
glasses.
The God Strain definitely does that, where it's the individual versus various establishments, whether the military, government, or more cosmic kind of entities. And we're not even going into the philosophical side of it because we don't have time now, but
we can have another episode
that's a great one.
The existentialism.
More philosophical. Yes, that would someone would have to lead the way on that.
Oh yeah, who will that be?
Education. I don't know.
All right, well,
I might be upset. So I might. Yeah.
definitely take on that, and we'll try and get Abbott Nihil along as well because he's a philosopher.
Oh yeah. Mom, he's a doctor of philosophy. So.
Oh my stars! Maybe even Kim Luster would do an episode.
Yeah. Oh my God, that would be heavy hitting. Heavy. All right, we'll do that in the future. We have plans for it, and I think we've reached.
She's so heavy!
Excellent, Paul McCartney there. All right.
Yeah.
I think.
Yay! All right, buddy.
Yeah. Speaking of right wing, Paul McCartney. He changed his tune.
Did he really? I don't know anything about that.
Really? Why is he right wing?
More so than he used to be. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't remember the Star Wars prequels where, the old Star Wars movies were about the sort of upstart young freedom fighters versus the powerful empire. And then when the prequels came out many years later, when George Lucas was a billionaire, it was all about taxes. Isn't that weird?
Oh, that's a good point.
It was like the tax collectors and stuff. Yeah. Anyway, trade regulation.
Trade embargo and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Cartoon God. Bunnies. Yeah. That's all of it.
Cartoon bunnies. All right, we've reached about the hour length of the Quackcast. So, guys, any final thoughts? I think we've probably been to our final thoughts just then.
We love politics.
Politics.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You could view a lot through that lens of politics, man. It's fascinating.
Everything. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening to Quackcast 291. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Grazie. Ciao.